Is anyone here? What did you find?
You are listening to Supernatural Confessions.
Hello, everybody. It's another Wednesday and another episode of On The Fringe where we sit down and we kind of talk about things that, borderline the life of
Should
science
or
and
should not be
crazy stuff.
talked about, and we may get censored again.
Yeah, well, sort of. But yeah, the topics that we have are always weird and interesting. And today, it's actually or it's an episode or a topic that actually came to us through some of the topics that people wanted to hear about. And I didn't know much about the topic beforehand before doing research, so we thought we might as well give it a go, give it a whirl. And it's quite a big topic. So what do
Yeah,
you
I
think,
think it's
Bill?
a really interesting topic. It's a lot more in
Yeah.
depth than we thought, and
It's a lot. It's too
there
many theories.
you might say it is so in depth that it goes through the earth.
Oh my god, yes. But yeah, I mean, so the topic is interesting because it borders on it overlaps a lot with a lot of different theories and different kinds of stuff. So I mean, like, some parts of it's a bit flat earth, some parts of it's a bit Illuminati-esque. So it's a kind of a great starting point for everything, I suppose. But yeah, let's say hi to some people we have on the chat. We have Alistair Adrian Chua. We have Kang. I'll just call you Kang because I can't really see that far. KK Hing, welcome back. And we have Jill. Yeah. So we have the usuals. Oh, and
Yep,
Miss
yep.
P. I'm still very curious who Miss P is. I don't think it's a Miss or a Miss P. So, someday we'll meet you. And Navi. There you go. Navi's back as well.
Oh yeah, there's Navi here.
So like we said on Friday, no show begins without Navi. But yeah, so today's topic we're going to talk about is the hollow Earth or hollow globe theory, and let me just share some background so just everybody's on the same page. So the hollow Earth theory is actually a hypothesis that suggests that the Earth isn't a solid sphere, but rather a hollow interior with another world inside. Now, according to the theory, the interior of the Earth has a central sun, and the hollow space that may be or is inhabited by a race of advanced beings. Now, the concept of the hollow earth has been present in mythology and folklore for centuries. However, the modern theory was popularized in the 19th century by a number of prominent scientists and thinkers. One of the most prominent proponents of the hollow earth theory was John Cleve Sims Jr., who was an American Army officer who proposed the theory in 1818. Now, Sims suggested that the Earth was made up of several concentric spheres, and each sphere containing its own atmosphere and inhabitable environments. He believed that the poles of the Earth were entrances to the hollow interior, and the explorers could enter the world through these portals. Now, when I say the poles, I mean the North and the South poles. Now, over time, the hollow Earth theory gained more popularity and inspired numerous novels, films, other works of fictions. In particular, the theory was popularized in the 19th century by such works as Jules Verne's. For many people, I think you're very familiar with Journey to the Center of the Earth, and Edgar Rice Burroughs, who created At the Earth's Core, and also Tarzan, if you guys know. Now, the lore of Hollow Earth theory suggests that the interior of the Earth is inhabited by a race of advanced civilized beings who develop technology beyond our understanding. Now, these are said to have lived in the interior of the Earth for thousands of years, and they possess knowledge and wisdom that surpass modern humanity or us, Earth's surface dwellers per se. Now, according to some of the proponents of the theories, these advanced beings are responsible for many of the world's ancient civilizations. They're said to have taught humanity the art of agriculture, architecture, engineering. They have even been responsible for some of the world's greatest wonders, like the pyramids of Egypt and the Nazca lines in Peru. Again, other people have suggested that the hollow earth is home to a number of otherworldly creatures, including giants, dwarves, dragons, and other mystical beings. Some even claim that the interior of the Earth is home to extraterrestrial beings who have visited our planet throughout history. Now, despite the popularity of the Hollow Earth theory in popular cultures, most scientists consider it to be a myth. And I think that's where, we'll kind of go into the different, I guess, the lore of it and suggests what could be in the interior side of it. Now, I think just before we continue, I'm going to share some of, for those people that don't know Journey to the Center of the Earth, I'll kind of give you a quick synopsis of what it is. Now, Journey to the Center of the Earth is a classic novel that is closely related to the Hollow Earth theory. The book tells of a story of Professor Otto Lindenbrock, who discovers an ancient manuscript that describes a journey to the center of the Earth. Now, Lindenbrock becomes obsessed with the idea of traveling to the center of the Earth, and he sets out on an epic adventure with his nephew, Axel, to the center or the interior of the planet. Now, the novel is significant in the context of the Hollow Earth theory because it presents a vivid and detailed description of what the interior of the Earth might look like. Now, Verne's depiction of the underground world is based on the idea that the Earth is hollow and contains central cavities with its own atmosphere and ecosystem,
Mm.
similar to the Hollow Earth theory in general. Now, throughout the novel, Lindenbrock and Axel encounter a wide range of strange and fantastical creatures that is said to inhabit the interior of the Earth. For example, they actually came across a herd of prehistoric mastodons and even some subterranean oceans. Now, it's interesting because if you look at it in the book's perspective, right, Verne's novel also includes numerous references to the Hollow Earth theory itself. For example, at one point, the two characters actually found that an ocean was heated by a central sun, which is the central component of the Hollow Earth theory. Now, the book also suggests that the Earth is made out of several concentric layers, and with every layer containing its own atmosphere and ecosystem. Now, one of the most significant elements of the novel in relation to the Hollow Earth theory is the idea that the interior of the sun has, a civilization. And in the story, they found different networks of tunnels and caverns that each have their own ancient race. So even at one point, I think it was Atlantis or some equivalent of Atlantis that they found. Now, the idea of a lost civilization is quite a common theme in the Hollow Earth theory. Now, similarly, in Edgar Rice Burroughs' book Pseudda, it's a novel that again looks at the Hollow Earth theory and is often compared to Journey to the Center of the Earth. Now, the book tells of a story of David Innes who discovers a tunnel leading to the interior and finds himself in a world called Pseudda. Like Journey to the Center of the Earth, Pseudda presents a vivid and detailed description of the interior of the Earth and based on the idea that the Earth is hollow and contains a central cavity. However, while Verne's novel Journey to the Center of the Earth sort of focuses on the scientific exploration, Burroughs' novel is more of a fantasy adventure that explores the idea of a lost world that exists inside the Earth. Now, in the book, the main character Inez actually discovers a vast subterranean world that is filled with creatures like dinosaurs and prehistoric beasts, and it also introduces the concept of a central sun, similar to both Journey to the Center of the Earth and the Hollow Earth theory together. So the most significant thing, again, and it seems to be a common thread with all of them, is actually the advanced civilization. In this case, they were actually called the Mahas. So as you just keep going, you can see that this common thread between all of them sort of blend and mix in with each other, and so far has been the main few hopping off points for a lot of people who believe in this theory, even though this may be a novel, but if you go back and you see the idea of it, it actually comes from the Hollow Earth theory. So, I think it's a very interesting sort of stories and good way for modern people to get into the theory. But I think Bill, you might have something for us to kind of go into the real understanding, or I guess the how do you say the inspiration of the topics itself.
Yes. So that was a wonderful but also quite textbook explanation of what the Hollow Earth theory is, and is amazing for anyone not super well read on the Hollow Earth. But there's one thing that I would like to focus on, which is the Sims holes. Um, I believe it was first described by a military officer, correct, Mr. Matt?
Yep.
Yep. And it described the Earth as being concentric like spheres of
Spears. Yeah.
atmospheres with their own like little habitable zones and powered by a central sun. Yes. So there have been quite a few notable writers, explorers, and people of note that were were quite convinced of the Sims holes. One of which is on the screen right now, which is by the um, gosh, okay, this is
This
not
is actually, yeah, this is actually by Sims itself. I remember coming across
yes,
this
yes.
picture or
So
this snippet.
this is a declaration by Sims himself saying that he has proof. He knows that Hollow Earth is as is so, and he names two individuals as his protectors, and he seeks 100 brave companions, well equipped to start from Siberia in the Fall Sea to go
Yeah.
on an exploration into the Hollow Earth.
Yeah,
That is
and
that
he,
is
he's not just some whack job, right? Like he was part of, well, he is, or at that point in time he was part of the US Army, or so he's not just someone with a tinfoil hat and just
yeah.
going
I
full
mean, you have
crazy.
to understand, right? Like Siberia and Antarctica in the 1800 in the during 1880 where when Sims declared like, hey, this is my theory, this is what I believe in, this seems sound. He did have he was quite a well-read man, especially especially within his own circles. So yeah, like the fact that he did call for people and the fact that he did name two individuals to be his protectors to go on this expedition with him does does show that, hey, like an a curious explorative mind, let's just say.
Yeah.
So another mention of the Sims holes was in Reynolds' pamphlet, which was written some which mentions um, a short mention of the Sims theory, um, and I'm going to just read out a tiny excerpt here. By teaching a common and then a writing school, he gathered funds to enable him to obtain 3 years of instruction in the Ohio University of Athens. After this, he had a paper and September bulletin. He became a convert. Wait, no, this is convert. Oh yeah, there we go. He became a convert to the theory of Captain Sims that the Earth is hollow and inhabited within, called the system of concentric spheres. His theory was taken sick and died. Reynolds uh, uh, persevered, and lectured in all the principal eastern cities, always to full houses, and charged 50 cents admission.
I mean, back then, 50 cents was was a lot. I
Yeah,
don't know
that
in
was a
terms of
lot.
inflation, but
So he
maybe
was well
$5.
respected in terms of his field. He did work in the education community,
Yep.
and he lectured his theories quite apparently like in multiple university multiple houses of learning, universities, or maybe even like town halls.
Yeah. And I think even I read that at one well, basically he was so big of a proponent of the hollow earth theory that he sort of lectured it all the way till the time of his death when he fell sick. And
Hmm.
I think because of these two, well, I wouldn't say characters, they're real people. These two individuals, they they really were sort of the first few people to make it into the modern world, a modern understanding of the term. But the Hollow
I
Earth theory
think
doesn't just,
I think these were the first two
yeah,
that try to describe the Hollow Earth in a more scientific light.
Right,
Um,
right.
I personally think that the Hollow Earth stems even further back in human history.
Yeah.
Um, just a little bit, just if we take a look back, let's say to the even to the ancient Greeks. Let's go back to the Greeks. I like the Greeks.
Hmm.
We can take a look at the Greek notion of the underworld,
Yeah.
Hades. You know, hot, always like river of souls, that kind of thing, and like there's water down there. There's things living down there, and it always begs the question, like how do they I how do how do ancient people know w-
Yeah.
that down there, that deep, is actually quite hot? How
Yeah.
do ancient people know that, hey, like, there are underground rivers, there are streams?
Yeah. I think it wasn't only the Greeks. I think most early civilizations or the
They had
concept
some
of
version
a,
of the underworld,
yeah,
yeah.
like some concept of the realm of the dead, right?
Mm,
It always had to do with it being underground or just not on the surface of the
yep,
earth.
yep.
Yeah.
And there are always stories about like the underground plane in most of these stories are not uninhabited. They're always inhabited by something.
Yeah.
Either it's if you're looking at Christians, it's like demons. If you're looking at like actually a lot of the Judeo Christians is always demons. Some Scandinavian folklore like fill the underground with things like trolls, elves, and weird like other things.
Yeah.
And yeah, and
I
it's
think even the Hindus had a equivalent of an underworld that also was, well, under the world, right?
yeah, that the word under the world. There you
Yeah.
go. But it always begs the question, like, how we know now with modern science that the deeper you go, the the hotter it gets when you
Yeah.
dig deeper down. But ancient people didn't have that. They didn't know.
Yeah. So, I mean, I have my hypothesis. I think if you look at it in the aspect of uh like underworld, right? Again, the word underworld actually comes from the old English word underworld, which is pretty much the same thing but slightly different. But most of them just refer to a sort of a realm that isn't known to humans per se. And I think, like you mentioned, like scientists, only now we kind of are able to explore the like in what's in our earth. But back in the day, it's a very mysterious place, and I think that was probably one possibility why it became such a mysterious environment for people to be around, right? Now, like,
That still
oh, you
begs
can,
the question of like, why was their knowledge so close to the truth?
the truth.
There's
Yeah.
well the truth of like, hey, like it's hot down there. Like they aren't supposed to be. People are still wrestling with the idea of night and
Yeah.
keeping oil, like keeping like torches and lamps lit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like even back in the day, people used to believe that the earth was actually flat. So I think maybe to them, if you think about it in the concept of if you look at the world as a plane, under the earth was this space that was just pretty much nothing and sort of empty. But I can kind of explain the whole fire and well, the heat, maybe that the fire and the heat that comes out in a lot of imagery of the underworld and stuff like that. Now, I think it really depends on where you're looking at, but I think fire as a whole was always quite a interesting thing for people back in the day, like the ancient people, because either it's mostly connected to destruction, right? If you look at Pompeii's and
Hmm.
volcanoes, volcanoes are especially weird because they're connected to the earth, but because you can't really explore it, you just see this thing spew out fire. And I think a lot of people back in the days, I think different civilization, what they used to do is they would even go up to volcanoes and have rituals to sacrifice people into the rituals to sort of please the gods or the underworld. And I think it was, if I'm not wrong, I think it was the Mayans that did it. And but I think the question that I have to ask, Bill,
Hmm.
do you genuinely believe that in our Earth there is just a giant gaping hole?
Hmm. Hmm. I think that I think that the hollow Earth the- theory that the Earth is just a giant gaping hole, I think is a little bit under described. I would prescribe to the theory that it's not empty, that it's more
Right.
like an eclair. There's
Okay. Well, okay. Before we
there,
get there, let me help you. Like this is where I'm coming, right? Let me help
yeah,
you get the answer. Because if you look at the hollow Earth theory, I like for me personally, I think it's a lot of pseudoscience that it's a bit far fetched to kind of suggest that the Earth doesn't have, it's not a solid sphere, but rather a hollow shell, right? And I think that the theory has been debated and discredited by a lot of scientists and researchers over time who, have conducted a lot of experiments to sort of provide evidence against it, right? So you have the things like gravity, where if the hollow Earth or the Earth was actually hollow, the gravitational force of the surface would be significantly less than what we observe. So we'd be pretty much floating. Well, not floating, but we could jump significantly higher. And I think coming back down to Earth would be a lot different, right? Now, gravitational measurements have been actually used to estimate the Earth's density as a whole, which is consistent with a solid body. And there's sources like the Earth is not hollow by Phil Flights in the slate. And then you also have seismic waves where earthquakes actually generate seismic waves that travel throughout the Earth's interior. These waves actually have been used to construct a basic model or quite a big model of the Earth's structure, which again shows that there's an interior core and a molten outer core. And again, you can look at sources like the Hollow Earth, a geological analysis by James A. Wood and his colleagues in the Journal of Geology. The next thing is actually the magnetic field. The magnetic field of the Earth is actually generated by the movement of molten iron in the outer core. And if the Earth were hollow, it wouldn't be able to sustain this magnetic field. Again, it's in the same paper by James A. Wood, so you can look at that. Also, lastly, and I think this actually has been happening for quite a while, polar exploration. There have been numerous expeditions that have been made to the Arctic and Antarctic regions, and none of them have discovered any evidence of any hole or opening or a hollow interior. And unless you're talking about crevices, and that's just basically a crack in the earth and a crack in the ice. And you can look at the Hollow Earth myth by W. Reed Blair in the Arctic. So I think there's a lot of scientific proof, or at least at this point, we know that the center of the Earth isn't just a sort of a cavern, and it's just a giant gaping hole. You know what I mean? I think it'd be weird to
okay,
look at it
okay,
that way
wait,
as
wait,
well.
Matt, let me speak here. Let me speak here.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, the hollow earth term is a little bit divisive because what constantly Sims and Reynolds describe is that the interior of the earth does have contents inside. It's
Right.
not just empty space.
Right.
Like it, if you think about it, like it does have like an every concentric ring does have an atmosphere. It does
Mhm.
have a habitable zone. It does have something acting as a core.
Okay.
So to say that like hollow earth means there's nothing inside, no, that's fundamentally incorrect. Like that's not what we're saying here.
Right.
we're
Okay.
saying we're saying that there are concentric rings around. There's several
Yep.
layers to the earth, that the deeper you go, the the different habitable zones there are.
Okay.
So you we're straying away from there being nothing, just empty space in the earth, and going into there's a condensed atmosphere. There are habitable layers and zones with which may or may not have intelligent, like civilizations there, and also something which is the core sun acting as the core.
Right. So what you're saying is basically that, maybe there, I mean, that, well, I guess we can both agree that there is a core, like an iron core, right? It's just that from the surface of the earth to the core, there are levels in which maybe civilizations can possibly exist.
Yes, correct,
Okay.
correct.
Okay.
Because the thing is, right, it's already been well established. Like if we take the scientific route, that
Yeah.
the core of the Earth is, because of the acting forces of gravity on it, is fundamentally all like extremely hot. It is extremely hot.
Hmm.
It does produce a lot of heat just from the stresses of like gravity acting upon it. So in theory, if there were condensed atmospheres that light
Hmm.
could pass through, it would be described as a sort of like kind of miniature sun. It would
Okay.
still have the mass
Okay.
because the sun is not massless. Is
Hmm.
it massless? I actually like
I mean, it's a giant gas bubble, but
it's a giant gas bubble, but it does have mass, right?
yeah.
So we're talking about a sun made out of like condensed material. Most people think it's like iron or like like various metals, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So when those metals heat up, produces light. Cool, yeah.
Right. But I mean, I think it's like, do you have any examples or kind of theories of maybe like what kind of civilizations might be living underground?
I mean, we can take a look at our own history of
Right.
exploration, where we found like underground like caverns down in like Paris. We've also found uh, like underground towns and even cities down
Hmm.
there in Peru,
Hmm.
where they seem to be these structures. Do we have a picture of it? Do we have pictures of it? Do we have pictures of it? The cruise? Yeah. The structures? Yeah. Or am I just crazy?
Yeah. But I mean, if you yeah, I think, I mean, there have been in history, there are a lot of people who actually live on the ground, especially if you go to different more desert like environments where it's a bit drier. People do dig, you find houses underground because, one, it's an easy way to get out of the sun. It's pretty much free. You
Yep.
don't have
Yep.
air conditioning.
It's easily
And
like a lot more temperature regulated than the
yeah,
outside because
yeah,
deserts get really cold at night.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think, if you I mean, I like your idea of the earth being a sort of an eclair,
It's
right?
not there. It's
So,
okay. It's okay.
and an eclair on the outside is sort of where we are, right? We're just on the
Mhm.
outside where the chocolate covering, and
Yep.
then as you go in, you sort of have this sort of, I suppose, layer of what would we call it? Some kind of pastry, and then
Yes.
the pastry
You
is
have the,
maybe
the,
in
the,
these
the
little air gaps, I guess what you can
yeah.
say.
You have
You
the
have air
cream
gaps.
filling.
Yeah.
You have the cream filling, which is the pastry, which is the atmosphere, the habitable atmosphere zone, which is mostly air, and then you have
Mhm.
another, um, skin inside, which is
Well, not the skin, but I suppose what you're saying is the core is the cream in the eclair.
yeah, yeah,
Right. Okay. But yeah, I mean, I I can understand, like, if you're saying that within a certain range, maybe humans and human-like civilized humanoids could live in these kind of areas. But I think, again, there are a lot of science that point to the fact that humans wouldn't be able to live that deep under or in Earth because, the conditions there are quite insane. And I think you kind of alluded to it before. The deeper you go in the Earth, the temperature actually increases due to a geothermal gradient. And just at a few kilometers down, the temperature actually can reach several hundred degrees Celsius, which is obviously already too hot for humans to survive. I mean, in Singapore, once we reach 36, 37, people are starting to complain it's hot, right? And I
Mm.
mean, you know, the Earth's atmosphere itself is actually concentrated near the surface, and the air becomes very thin the deeper you go, similar to the ocean in a way, where oxygen sort of compresses and the pressure that adds up. But at a depth of about around 10 kilometers, the pressure and lack of oxygen would make it almost impossible to breathe without specialized equipment already. And I think if you continue to look at the pressure inside of the earth, it actually increases with the depth, and the boundary between the mantle and the core, um, it can reach a million times the atmospheric pressure at the surface. And at that pressure, it would crush any human being that ventured that far down. And I think something that maybe Elvin, if you could pull up the picture of the mantle and the core, so that everybody can have a rough understanding of what I'm referring to. But the other one, the M9, M9. Yeah. So I mean, I think you need to think about as well as if you're so far below, there's also the lack of food and water, which obviously everybody needs, right? And I think it's just quite insane to think that we would be able to live so far down. And I mean, even if you look at the picture here, the deepest exploration that humans in general have gone was actually the I believe it was the Kolar super deep borehole, right? And that only went down maybe I believe that it went down to about 18 kilometers down. Oh wait, sorry, 12,000 or 12 kilometers down. And actually, just so everybody gets a rough idea of what we're talking about, the Kolar Super Deep Borehole was actually a scientific drilling project that was conducted by the Soviets back in the 1970s and the 1980s. Now, its objective was actually to drill deep down as far as possible into the Earth's crust in order to study the planet's composition and the structure. Now, the depth of which it reached was again, it was 12, actually, it was 12.26 kilometers down before it actually stopped, which makes it actually the deepest hole we have in the Earth, and especially at this deep down, right? It's actually located in the Kola Peninsula in the northern western Russia, actually bordering Norway. Now, the problem with this project, it was actually really challenging because again, they faced the troubles that I just kind of read out to you guys. It was basically they had high temperatures, the pressure, as well the rock formations that they face on the way down, and the drilling team has had to contend with unexpected water flow and unstable rock formations that actually threatened to collapse the borehole. But throughout the whole thing, they actually found quite interesting stuff, and it actually yielded a lot of scientific evidence and data on the Earth's composition and the structure. And they actually found out that the Earth's crust was actually thicker than we thought. Now, ultimately, it actually was in 1992, it was actually canceled due to budget cuts because having a giant hole and constantly drilling down so far was really expensive. And I think at some point people kind of gave up and were like, nope, we don't really want to keep drilling there for no reason. But, even if you look at just the Earth's crust, right, it's about a 0 to 100 kilometers long or thick. And that's quite a distance already in itself. And if you were to look further down into the mantle stretches all the way down to, I think, 2,900 kilometers. And at that, that's basically from here to Thailand. And that's a long distance down. And even if you just go 10 kilometers down, it's already so hot. So I don't see any um, human having the possibility of even living down there. I think it's quite a stretch.
Okay, okay. What if I told you
Uh-huh.
every um every hollow theory never specifically states humans live down there. We're not
Right.
talking about humans. We're talking
Okay.
about advanced civilizations and also things of a bipedal
Okay.
human-like structure, like with
Mm-hmm,
two
mm-hmm,
arms, two legs, that kind of thing.
mm-hmm.
I think that you do have some points. You do have some points in terms of the yes, it does get very hot down there. Yes, it is very extreme conditions down there. Yes, it does present quite a few challenges for anything living down there. But it
Mhm.
does not mean that life cannot persist down there, even intelligent life. So I would like to propose the idea that, hey, um, we are not talking about humans living down there. We're talking about uh, another entity, kind of like I mean, we all know what the concept of a dwarf is, right? Like, an
Yeah.
actual, like two-legged, kind of like not like a medically conditioned dwarf. I mean, like the OG fantasy kind of like, what a dwarf is.
With the ones with the funny ears, the
Yeah,
pointy
the
ears.
old like Nordic kind of like dwarves, like kind of like very stout, known to be good smiths, sometimes known to be quite heat resistant because they like to smith down in caves, in deep caves, mining down there. That's kind of along the lines I'm thinking of. Like, if there were advanced civilizations down there, that's along the lines you would go for. You wouldn't have the basic human blueprint. You might have hands, you might have legs, you might be bipedal, but you will definitely be, again, as Matt said, compressed by the pressure,
By the pressure.
by the pressure a little bit. There you go. And also you'll be built a lot stockier. You might have enhanced, like, vision, just to take advantage of whatever, like, small amounts of like light might be coming in from whatever sources you might have. And also I think it's quite readily I think it's surprising to me that that a lot of cultures describe very similar entities coming out of like um, supposedly extremely deep, like cave, like, holes, like
Mhm.
caverns and that kind of
Mhm.
thing, right? Coming out and interacting with people. They're obviously not humans. They're very different than humans. So these entities that are described can be described as dwarves, trolls, elves. That's a fairly common, like, nomenclature in most cultures, especially once you get up into like the Scandinavian countries, like further up north. Yeah, these kinds of like creatures start becoming very, very prevalent in a lot of like local culture, and then a lot of like, local local dialect even, where a lot of them still, a lot of like Scandinavians believe in trolls and elves still to this day.
Yeah,
Uh,
wasn't there a movie recently on? Well, I think it was a troll, but he was kind of a mountain troll.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think there was also a couple studies done on that. But the point I'm trying to get is when we're talking about like civilizations underground, in there you go. That is a Scandinavian like elf or dwarf, elf or dwarf, um, in the old tradition style. So we're talking about like things with maybe the same basic blueprint of like two hands, two legs, and a head, but influenced by the environment around them to be maybe stockier, maybe shorter, maybe hardier, maybe a bit wider, as a lot of us are turning these days. And
But
it's just very interesting to me that a like the the prevalence of these kinds of like entities in many different cultures, in many different mythoses, are quite are consistent, are quite consistent. That they do come out of the ground, they do
yeah,
come out of like caves, they do
yeah,
come out of like deep dark ravines that like no man goes into.
yeah. So I mean, I want to. Okay, if we're looking at the sort of, if dwarfs biology is anything similar to a humanoid, right? I mean, let's have a hypothetical
Mm,
sort of sitting, right, or kind of understanding. Because I read a comment by Jill, and she said like deep ocean fish, if they could survive in really deep ocean, beyond where a human can go, I guess it's plausible. Now, let's think in the context. I mean, we actually wanted to talk about the deep oceans, but actually that's going to be its own episode because that's a big topic there. But even if we look at the Mariana Trench, right, I think it goes down about 12 kilometers down, and actually that's the same depth in which the Cora super deep borehole went. But
mm,
let me give you some numbers, right? And this is a hypothetical situation. As I mentioned, the deeper you go, it's going to be significantly hotter, right?
yep.
Now, the limit that you can sort of estimate that it'd be the limit of which something like a humanoid could live is actually about 10 to 12 kilometers deep, beyond which the temperature would have exceeded about 200 degrees Celsius. Now the pressure, it's slightly different. It's a shorter estimate. Is actually the limit is actually estimated to be about 8,000 meters deep, beyond which we would explode or anything would explode if even if the dwarf, if it's anything similar. Again, resources in which they would have to feed, because in these, for if the dwarfs and they have to eat something, they would have to get something from somewhere. Then you'd have to look at the psychological factors. I mean, being so deep down, you're quite isolated. You're in some kind of confinement area. You definitely can't be claustrophobic because that would drive you insane. It would drive me insane. So you'd obviously have to have some kind of activity or mental health week for those beings. Yeah. So if you look at all of it, it sort of estimates that, or roughly scientific agreement is that if it were hypothetically possible, the limit of which a person or a humanoid creature could possibly live is about 10 to 12 kilometers deep. Now, I also saw a comment by KK Hing, if that, if we could build our BTOs underground, would it be more expensive or cheaper? Actually, it would be significantly more expensive, I believe, because having the technology to go down that deep, even if it's a maybe 1 or 2 kilometers down, that would be insane. A lot of money. I mean, if you look at the
KK
if
Hang,
you
it's always going to be more expensive because it's HDB. It's, there's no questions about it. It's always going to be more expensive.
yeah. And I mean, you can look at things like, for example, Ion in Orchard, right? If for those people who are Singaporean, back in the days, I think it wasn't too long ago, what, 10 years, maybe 15 years ago, the ground in which Ion stands is so small. It's so tiny, and basically all it had was an MRT, and there was nothing above ground. But they managed to dig and have significant levels or basement levels down. And you know what? I think it'd be plausible, but whether or not the uh, government or anybody would want to spend that kind of money to fulfill that, it's a bit crazy. And I think HCB prices would be significantly a lot more money. But I think something you mentioned before was quite interesting, and I think on a scientific perspective, I would have to agree with you, is that there have been evidence and there have been findings of organisms that do live very deep in the Earth's the Earth's crust, or yeah, basically
Yeah.
it's just the Earth's
You
crust.
have the
You know,
extremophiles, right?
yeah. So the extremophiles, for everybody that doesn't know, they're a group of organisms that are or have adapted to the environments of living in very extreme climates. So they can be found all the way in really deep in the earth. They can also be found really deep in the ice, actually. But on the contextual scale, they're not big creatures. They're not very complex. On a biological evolution kind of perspective, they're just rather simple, and most of the time, maybe most of it's actually single-celled organisms. So bacterium, nematodes, tardigrades. Yep, hillbillies, right? Tardigrades. By the way, tardigrades are really cute. If you want to go and see a picture, they're super cute.
I don't think
They
they're
can.
cute. I don't know
I
why
think they're,
people
I
think they're
think they're
cute.
great. I think they're super cute. But tardigrades, or people like to call them space bears, they're even the first few organisms that actually can live in the vacuum of space. So, even if you go down in that depth, the possibility of which something could live in an organism it is very plausible in the context of science. Just they may not be as complex as what I think people think they are. You know?
So okay, let's bring it back a little bit, right? So you mentioned that like theoretically, a human-like organism, like at least like, let's put it back, right? Like a multicellular organism,
Hmm.
like with any kind of like complexity, um,
Hmm.
would only be able to live at the depths of around like maybe 10 kilometers, 12 kilometers. Was it? Is that correct?
Yeah, 10 to 12 is
Yep.
probably the absolute
So
limit.
so we've already established that the Earth's crust is already a little bit thicker than we would have thought because
Mm.
of the Kola super deep borehole
Yeah.
experiment. Now, let's say we take that space of
Hmm.
10 to
Hmm.
12 kilometers beneath the Earth's surface, right? We're not going through the crust. We're not going to go like all the way down to the mantle. We're just going to take 10 to 12 kilometers beneath the Earth's surface. Let's
Hmm.
also add in the fact that, hey, um, like huge cave systems exist. Huge natural forming cave systems exist that go far, far deeper than we actually have like any relevant experience in mapping out. And how much of that surface area
Hmm.
would be able to contain some sort of like some sort of like large cavernous space that could fit a semi, some sort of like large body of organisms in.
Hmm. Hmm.
So you think about like the human as a species, right? Like we like to think of ourselves as the dominant species of the planet, like which we kind of are because we tend to just beat down on anything that doesn't conform to what we want to do.
Yeah.
Um, but we our cities we don't take up that much of the Earth's surface area when it comes to cities.
Okay.
We tend to condense ourselves quite a lot in terms of like large cities and like especially like skyscrapers, and now we don't really do a lot of like towns or like with mass urbanization and so forth.
Like we don't really spread out
Yeah,
in
we
a
don't
way.
spread out. So I think that it's I think there is a case to be made that large multicellular organisms
Hmm.
in large pockets made by either natural erosion or
Right.
the interconnecting of volcanic or of dormant volcanic like streams, or
Hmm.
interconnection of like cave systems through natural water erosion, or cave-ins and like that kind of thing, right? Would create enough space. And also, as we know, there are single cellular and multicellular organisms that live in these cases already, with the case of like maybe like blind cave fish and stuff like that, enough to
Yeah.
have an ecosystem. So what would be eating the cave blind fish?
Hmm. Hmm.
So we already know, like at the bottom of the Marianas Trench, we have like tubular worms, we have crabs, we have like eels, even pretty large eels as well. So now we have a baseline for the ecosystem where
Right.
there is no light down there. They're purely feeding on the on the sustenance and the heat of the geothermal vents, right?
Hmm.
Could be something similar down there, could be something different, could be some sort of strange form of algae that is, somehow facilitating some sort of like making energy somehow. We don't know.
Right. Right.
Um, so, what would be the organism? Um, what would be an organism that I believe that would uh, thrive the best in these kinds of conditions? That is multicellular. That could be described as intelligent. Do you have any ideas on that, Matt?
I mean, I think I know. You know, for those that are aware, actually one of my favorite animals is actually well an octopus, and I
Yes.
guess if you think about it, well, okay, not an octopus per se, like deep in the earth, like a similar creature, similar entity, like an octopus. But yeah, I can see how that could be plausible. I mean, if you think about the food chain, there's something that's always bigger that would want to feed on it, right? So no matter how small, and I think over time there will be some kind of organism that would stretch and then become bigger, and there's always something trying to kill something or something trying to eat something, right?
Yeah. There's always environmental factors that create um, these kinds of food chains where there is always going to be like an apex predator. There is going to be like an omnivore somewhere somehow, and I believe that an octopi is an optimal body plan for something that is going to live down in a place where there's high pressure, very narrow, could be claustrophobic,
Hmm.
but also has the potential to have large open caverns.
Right.
No octopi, no bones. The only limiting factor they have is their beaks.
Yeah.
They're a complicated multicellular animal which already possesses a high degree of intelligence and problem solving capabilities. I'm saying there's a very good reason why, like, we can bring it back to we can bring it back to aliens. We can bring it back to aliens from last week, where aliens, a lot of alien civilizations, always have tentacles, always have octopi, like something there. Because it like we have to think about it in a way where it is completely alien to us. The environment is so hostile to a human, to something
Yeah.
like human, that whatever is down there, whatever could be living down there, within these giant caverns, within these cave systems, within these um, dormant, like volcanic, like
Pockets of air, basically.
pockets, right,
Yeah.
is going to be fundamentally quite alien from us.
Yeah. I mean, if you, yeah, I guess, yeah, I can see that being plausible. Yeah, I could see it being plausible. I mean, this episode has a weird turn. We've gone pretty far down the rabbit hole, and we've spoken about all kinds of things. And I think even if you look at, I mean, from my context, right? If you look at the Sims whole and even Reynolds pamphlet, right? And I think a lot of the stories, even with Journey of the Center to the Earth and the stuff by Riceborough, right? I think a lot of it is less about the fact that the earth itself is or the center of the earth is hollow, but more that, like what you mentioned, there's different pockets where we can sort of inhabit, or well, these kind of creatures can inhabit. And I think back in the day people wouldn't know about it, so therefore they believe that maybe traveling to the center of the earth was actually just going into some kind of really deep cave system, and to them that was sort of enough to be, this is a different world or different
Yeah,
being,
yeah,
right?
because it totally is. It absolutely is. You talk about like cave fish as they're like normal fish. No, they're not.
Yeah,
You go like a couple, you go a couple dozen meters down, you start getting cave fish. You start getting whip scorpions. And it's like that is weird stuff, man.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I guess that would explain kind of the theory behind your the underworld per se. And I think people that explore it down, I mean, looking at the octopus is kind of strange that it's quite remnant to a certain religion. And I think it's kind of weird.
Yes, yes. Now imagine the octopus with hands and legs, and you have Cthulhu, my friends. Thank you very much. And that's On the Fringe. That is my theory.
Yeah. On that kind of bombshell where this crazy subterranean octopus that lives deep underground is actually Cthulhu. Yeah. I think we're gonna call it an episode. But yeah,
Cthulhu!
I yeah, I think it's a crazy idea. But yeah, I hope you guys like this episode. This episode was actually, there's a lot of different things that we could have talked about, but we know we gave you quite an in-depth look on the topic. So, if you like what you see, we're always gonna be here. Supernatural Confessions growing. And I think it's nice to have everybody that we always see back as the same people. It's nice. And I think we're growing, and we're always
Yes.
growing to bring you more educational and in-depth look at different ideas and different theories of things. And I mean, you have Bill throwing out his crazy Cthulhu ideas, which, yeah, they're the bombshells. But
It's either it's always octopi or snails. One of the two. One of the two.
yeah, but again, if you like what you see, we will be starting a Patreon soon, along with the boys on Friday Night Lives. Friday Night Live, if you want to hear more about the supernatural aspect of things, definitely catch them there. It's at 10 p.m. on Friday nights. Um, and there's gonna be a lot of things that are coming up. I'm gonna, since I don't usually do this, but I'm gonna do it anyway. Next week, we're actually investigating something very, well, I would say similar in terms of hypothesis and theory. It's quite a heavy, oh, not heavy, it's very deep topic and in-depth topic, which is actually the Holy Grail. Now, the Holy Grail has just been around for so long, and I think it's along the course that we talk about it at some point. And there's a lot of things beyond that as well. So, we also have our viewers' choice, which will be on the 29th of March, or the viewers' choice episode. So, again, from now till then, please keep sending us your hypothesis and your ideas. So, oh, well, the things that you want to hear about, so that we can give you an episode that will be quite insane and quite crazy. We decided that would be even, I mean, we're going into different stuff like the Illuminati, the different cults and different world controlling organizations like the Bilderbergs and stuff like that. So if you want to hear about that, I think nothing is really kind of off the topic or not possible to be discussed here. So we will put out a post. On this post, you can actually just throw in your topics, and then you can let other people vote. You just keep sending us. We'll choose the best one that has been popping up the most, like we did last week.
I mean, yeah. Next week is going to be super exciting with the whole Holy Grail. We have to be very, very careful about it because, well, we could very easily fall into the trap of constantly talking about the bad mustache man, like History Channel. So we have to be better than them.
Yes, we'll bring you like basically everything that you need to know. I think the style and what we're doing with On The Fringe now is everybody's just gonna have, you're gonna have everything, you're gonna get everything, but you're gonna get our twist on what we think it is, on what it could be. And I think it'll be just fun for everybody, just be everything. And I see, Navi. Oh, by the way, if you guys have any questions, do post them up in the chat group so that we can answer them before we end the episode. But yeah, we have episodes like, for example, on Navi Network, he actually said world beyond Antarctica, which is a topic we do want to explore, like the deep sea, the Mariana Trench. There are a lot of theories and hypotheses of what
Mm.
could be there, and I mean even the deep ice kind of theories, which we wanted to cover in today's episode, but because it would be a very long episode. We would be sort of bouncing around land, earth, and sea, or land, ice, and sea. So it'd be a lot of different things. So we're going to show you the facts. We're going to show you the truth. At the end of the day, you kind of need to make a decision on what you believe is the truth, and what is the truth is up to you.
Yes. Might I remind everyone that we at On The Fringe and Supernatural Confessions as a whole encourage everyone to invite their friends and family and whoever they might think that would enjoy the show to come watch the show. Um, we encourage everyone to have discussions and correct us. In the
In our comments.
in our comment section. Please behave. Don't do that. Don't bully people. Bullying bad.
Yes. Bullying.
Yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe. Do all that jazz. Talk to us on the Discord. Talk to us on the TikToks. We do have a TikTok that is fairly
Yeah, we
active
do.
now, and yeah, please, share us around. Share us around. We really appreciate the support, and yeah, we welcome new, fresh,
Unspoiled.
unspoiled minds
Yes, even
into
if somebody
our
doesn't,
community.
if even if people don't know about a lot of these theories, I think it's a good episode to kind of sort of bring them slowly into this crazy fringe tinfoil hat area that we kind of exist at or exist in, right? And yeah, I mean, especially because we're gonna have we will be having merch soon. So do have us keep on the lookout for that. And we do have our live show. I think since we have been talking about it on Fridays and everything, we will be having our live show where you will see Bill and myself, along with Eugene and Jonathan, for a special episode of Friday Night Live. We call it the Live Show, but we will be discussing less of the. We will still bring our taste on the fringy stuff, like what I did last Friday on that episode of Friday Night Live. We will bring out theories there, but we'll be focusing a lot more on the supernatural aspect of it.
The
So from now
supernatural
to then,
fringe, you could say.
the supernatural fringe. Yeah, you could. So we will definitely be going there. So from now to then, keep your end of June free. Uh, for those that aren't around or not in Singapore, maybe consider having a nice little short weekend trip to come visit and see us, where we can, I can finally put some faces to the names that I see, since I was the only one that didn't really go or I wasn't around for the last live show. I think it's nice to finally meet everybody. And in this context, it's actually quite a big it will be quite a big event. We have 100 spaces. I think it'd be quite competitive and quite tight. So once the announcement comes out, look out for either our pre-event or our early bird tickets, or if you're slightly late for that, you can look out for our regular tickets. They have slightly different perks for getting the early bird tickets.
Yep.
But yeah, definitely keep a lookout for the announcement there. We would be posting it on Facebook, probably TikTok, and we will definitely remind you here. And again, once the Patreon is out, we will definitely keep everyone updated on that. But yeah, what a way to wrap up this episode.
I mean,
It's
yeah, everyone, yeah, the jazz.
Yeah, you know the jazz. It's
You know the
great
jazz.
to finally see you guys on a hump day, and it's nice to talk about. Yeah, we may not get temporary tattoos with Bill in my face. That's a big sus, but we do have ideas. We can put. I don't want to see people
Well, maybe
having
not
mugs with my
temp
face on.
tattoos, but I like the idea of having an AI merge our faces together. That'd be pretty
Oh
freaky.
no, that is weird. Oh my god, that's like us having a baby. It's okay, but yeah,
I don't
you know,
know.
no. But again, you can yeah, my god, I lost my train of thought. Right, okay, yeah, so again, thanks for joining us on this episode of On The Fringe. We're glad to have you, and I'm signing out first because I can't think anymore. But until next time, stay on the fringes. Bill, you go.
Yes. The truth is always out there. Let's go, friends.
Okay, right, thanks for watching, you guys. We'll see you next week. Bye.
What did you find?
You are listening to Supernatural Confessions.